Hi, I am Rommys Beltran, and I am here to invite you to join me on a journey that shatters the walls of deception. As the only of 6 original defendants left with charges pressed against me, I share my own perspective, a victim of a corrupt justice system, falsely accused and unjustly pursued. This platform is to speak the unfiltered truth about who I am and the battles that I have fought. Welcome to another episode of my podcast. This is Rommys Beltran, and today I have a special guest. And I want to introduce you right away to him because he's going to give us a very good highlight on the irregularities that are going on in my case. So I'd like to introduce you to Detective Jay. How you doing, Detective?
I'm good, Doctor. How are you doing?
Very good. So happy to see you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So without having to hold on for too long, I want to introduce yourself to my audience and explain a little bit more about who you are and what's your experience, and then we move on into our case.
All right. I would be happy to do that for you. I'm a former law enforcement officer of a little over 10 years down in the state of Florida. And throughout my career, I worked for about 7+ years in investigations, major cases, homicides, murders, rapes. Officer uses of force. I used to investigate other officers who had gotten in shootings and things like that. So I have a vast experience with working in the courts, testifying in grand juries, in major cases and things like that. So I've had a lot of interactions with, the prosecutors, attorneys, even defense attorneys, and just kind of, a lot of time doing that and having the opportunity to see what is common and what's uncommon.
Correct. So it is my understanding also that you are very familiarized with the process of keeping evidence with the DA's office and the process of special witnesses, interviews with witnesses or victims. And why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, when you talk about that, working with evidence with the prosecutor's office when preparing for a case, to present a case, I think mainly, just briefly on what we talked about before, we're focusing mainly on like the witness testimony and how that's kind of developed in pretrial through deposition, interviewing witnesses that the state's going to have and present for their case, and so forth. So, typically when you have a witness that's part of the evidentiary process, they're going to be brought in, and there's going to be a chance for the prosecution and the defense to pre-interview those witnesses prior to any trial or hearing that's going to go forward. So that's an opportunity to kind of pre-screen those witnesses to see who really the state wants to call in the trial and
Correct.
actually present. Because they may have, I'll just throw a number out there, they may have 100 witnesses, but not all of them may have testimony that's evidentiary or is testimony that they're going to want to argue in court.
Correct.
So the trial that is going on with you is in this witness stage of deposing and interviewing the witnesses that the state has. And you had mentioned before that there was an attorney, a private attorney who...
Yes, exactly. So we have a situation here in particular with my case that I've never seen before. And I worked for attorneys several times in my life. But before we go any further with this, what I would like to do is to show you this video so you can give me a perspective what is going on here. So let's watch this.
We're waiting to see when the order comes out, if this will be set for the end of August or beginning of September. But we're going to start helping Fulton County interview our witness clients in preparation for that trial.
All right, so basically, for the viewers who don't understand what's going on, this attorney is a private attorney who is saying in his own words that he's being part of the DA's office, of aiding somehow the DA's office and guiding or somehow manipulating the witnesses against me. What do you have to say about that, Detective? Because I know you have a vast experience on, dealing with the back part where we as defendants don't have any way to know what's going on back there.
Yeah, like based on what he was saying, I've seen private counsel represent witnesses when they're being interviewed and they're just considered witnesses in a criminal proceeding or something that's leading up to that. Everyone in this country has the right to representation, whether or not
Of course.
you're a suspect or anything like that. And from what I understood a little bit about the case, some of these witnesses are Spanish speaking only.
Yes.
I know from what he was saying on the video that he in his firm that they also speak Spanish, so he could be assisting them in translation. However, or just helping them feel comfortable for the state to actually witness, to actually give their testimony.
I know that is possible, but that's not what he's saying. He's saying he's representing these victims. So if the state is representing these victims, how is he representing the victims? It is like it's very conflicted what he's saying.
True. Well, they're state witnesses, so the state's bringing them on, but he represents them because he is planning on filing a civil suit following the criminal case. So he's actually has them as their clients. Essentially, they're his clients as well.
So I understand, yeah, because he has been very verbal before, and there are actually articles where he has expressed to the media that he is planning on suing me civilly after I get charged and convicted of something. So that is his plan, and everybody knows it. So, and he's public about it. So my question is, and I think what is concerning me the most is, why is he now involved in the criminal part of it? And please, give us a little bit of enlightenment of, because I don't understand. I just don't.
Well, yeah, I mean, if I was to put myself in his position, I would want to push that too and do that because it's going to give me, a phrase that they use. It's like you're getting two bites of the same apple, meaning he's going to be present for what they're saying in their witness testimony in the criminal case, and he can make sure it gives him a better position to make sure that that's consistent with then that testimony in the following civil case that he's going to have or try to file against you afterwards. Now, I've seen, like I said, just for people that are witnesses, I've seen them bring, their own counsel along because it makes them feel comfortable.
Criminal counsel, who is...
Well, just a benign attorney, meaning an attorney that's not involved with the defense or the prosecution, but
Correct.
But they're being hired or they're being represented by, I don't want to say ambulance chaser, but like a civil attorney who's planning on filing a lawsuit to represent them in it because they are claiming damages. So when I say witness, I mean these witnesses are also claiming to be the victims. So, the criminal case is the victim, but in the civil case, they're going to be, the petitioner. They're going to be claiming some damages, some financial damages, and that's what he's there for. So he's going to get that second opportunity to make sure that he's getting this opportunity to make sure these testimonies are consistent. I mean, if I was him, I would definitely try to do the same thing.
Right, so
it's
he's
smart
preparing.
on his point.
Yeah, he's preparing
Correct.
his civil case against me.
Correct.
But the question is, and that's fine, he's an attorney, so he can prepare his case all the time. Why is he claiming that he's attached to the DA's office? He's making it sound like he is another DA, basically.
Yeah, basically he has full access to what's going on in the criminal case.
Why does he have a full access?
Well, that's a question that has to be asked to the lead prosecutor or whoever's in charge of that, because he should not be involved in the case that way whatsoever.
Have you ever seen that?
I personally no, not at all.
So this is an attorney who has a financial interest against me,
Correct.
who is being allowed by the DA's office to be part and participant on having access to evidence, having access to files, witnesses, because he's saying it, that he is preparing the witnesses and assisting the DA. He's saying it boldly all over the social media, in public.
It's a good chance. It's definitely a good chance.
So, I don't know. To me, it's disturbing, but I just wanted to know what do you think about something like that professionally, and let's keep it on that professionally.
Yeah, I mean, professionally, I think it creates a very bad perception because, in those previous cases where I've dealt with, I'll give you a specific example. So the state attorney's office or the district attorney's office, has the power of subpoena. They have subpoena power. So if you're subpoenaed in a court case, you're required to answer and respond to that subpoena.
Correct.
Under threat of being held in contempt.
Correct.
Jail, fines, things like that. So when they're bringing in these individuals, for example, some people, they do bring a lawyer because they're afraid that part of their involvement did have, and this is nothing, I'm just using an example. I'm not trying to say that this is what's going on in your case, but some people do.
On a murder case, basically.
Yeah, some people do get nervous because maybe they were doing something that was criminal at the time that they saw this other crime
They
happen.
get them involved.
Correct.
Or charged.
So when you're mandated, when you're basically subpoenaed to come in and be interviewed by law enforcement, you don't have the choice to. If a lot of times they'll give immunity on that, so you can come in and talk to us, and we're going to give you immunity. So anything you say to us cannot be used against you, criminally.
The state can do that. Yeah.
Correct. So you lose, in a sense, you're actually losing your ability to. You're losing the Fifth Amendment in the sense that you don't have the right to remain silent when you're not facing a threat of criminal charges.
Correct.
Right. So that's kind of what that is. You have to come, you have to answer subpoena, you have to answer questions, you have to answer them truthfully.
They could incriminate you.
Yeah, because if you lie, then that could be obstruction.
Correct.
So in this situation, by him being involved there, like a lot of witnesses or people say, hey, that's why I have my attorney here. I need them here, or I'm just not going to cooperate, and you'll just have to hold me in contempt. So sometimes the state attorney or the district attorney will try to be a little bit flexible with letting them have their needs, but when that defense attorney when the representation for the defendant is also present during those depositions, they can object to the presence of their specific attorney. And typically before they even go on record, they'll already have a stipulation understood saying, hey, look, okay, they're just here, their attorney, but they cannot really intervene or interfere in that deposition. They can't object. They can't do they're just kind of, it's almost like they're just there to make that person feel comfortable as they're asking questions.
So, Detective, what if, because this attorney is bilingual, he speaks Spanish, what if he's there saying, I'm just translating from these clients, for the clients, clients for him, yeah.
Well, just right off the bat, and I'll use this, it's a conflict of interest, and quite frankly, because he's not an employee of the district attorney.
Correct.
He's not working for the prosecution, literally, or he's not hired to work for the prosecution.
Correct.
They're not paying him. He's just there to represent or to assist his clients in this process. So it's a conflict of interest in that what the witness says, if he's the one translating it to English, you don't know for 100% sure if that's a true translation. I mean, he could
Correct.
be assisting the translation to to polish up that testimony in a sense. So the state needs their own translator that works for them to translate it true and correctly. Because
Correct.
other than that, it's really a tainted translation.
So the concern is that he will be translating in a narrative that will aid him and help him to sue me at the end.
Yeah, so and that's kind of the conflict of interest. He has a financial interest in this with his client.
Correct.
So, and then he's getting this again, like I said, that first bite of this apple. He's allowed to come in here and make sure that that testimony is exactly how he wants it to be for when it comes into the civil side. You know, when all this is done, they're going to have to go and put this in civil court.
So, Detective, I'd like to pause over here really quick and go over what's happening so the audience have a full understanding. So, we're having a DA and a DA's office who is allowing this unrelated party who has financial interest in my case to have access to discovery, access to the witness testimony, access to the documents, access to everything that's going on in my case, okay? And access to the narratives and the positions and everything else that's going on in this case. How does this look?
I mean, I think it looks bad.
It's no other way to say it.
Yeah, I mean, it looks bad. I mean, if I was the state, I would want to keep the process as clean as possible. I mean, I can see why that civil attorney has an interest and why he's kind of trying to push into the situation so he can, again, have he has an opportunity to keep it clean. So when it comes to civil court, it makes it easier.
It makes it easier for him.
Correct, because regardless of the outcome, I mean, regardless of the outcome of your criminal case, he still has to make a case. Obviously, if you're convicted, it makes it really, really easy. If you're not, though, it doesn't mean he doesn't have a chance to still sue you. So,
Yeah, but he still has a first-hand involvement on the case from the beginning. So let's go back to the his presence on the keeping or capturing or whatever word we want to use for him to be first-hand on the witnesses. Is he next to these witnesses to maybe somehow influence them or manipulate what they want to say or they need to say? What is your perception on that?
well, he's in a position to do it, definitely. But because of his financial interest in the civil side, he's in a position to do his best to keep that testimony consistent. To do that, you know, basically he could be coaching his clients. He's in a position to make sure that their original statements are consistent with their statements during deposition,
That is
screening.
correct. I didn't think about that, but you're right.
Yeah, he's in a position to do that, definitely. And that's, again, if I was the state attorney or the state, I would not want him to be involved. I wouldn't want to create that perception.
That is correct, because it definitely clutters the integrity of the case, of the prosecution, and of the DA's office.
Yes, I mean, I think so. I mean, and it obviously brings up argument, even if I did get the conviction, or regardless of a conviction, because the state could appeal or you could appeal, but it brings up an issue. It brings up an argument for appeal down the road. So
going over all these irregularities that have been going on from the beginning with this case that we have already gone over in previous episodes, but I just want to kind of give you a little rundown so you can tell me, how do you feel about this? My first attorney gets removed by the judge and he gets turned into a witness of the state. So now my attorney, the person who knows all my secrets on my case, is against me. Is a witness of the state against me. Then I'm forced to get a second attorney. I get a second attorney and the guy robs me, takes my money, and closes and shuts his practice. So he disappears. So I'm forced to hire another attorney. Third attorney dies. He just died. And the firm disintegrated. So I got a call from the partner saying, we're shutting down this firm. I'm going to my own practice. And we decided not to take your case. So I've hired a fourth attorney, detective.
Oh my God.
And my fourth attorney is arrested on my last hearing. Then we have another attorney who is part of the DA's office who wants to sue me, and he's being actually facilitated to obtain evidence and everything against me to civilly sue me after the case is said and done and I'm convicted of something. What do you have to say about this? Is there a way to think that they are doing this correctly, or is there a way to think that this is going to be a fair trial for me?
Either you have the worst luck in the world, or there's someone's involved with manipulating or playing games with this situation. I've never heard so many attorneys.
Exactly, and not only that, but if we go back, so they offer a deal to all 5 co-defendants, but they don't offer me a deal. They're taking me straight. So they turn, just like you said, every one of them is now protected. They can, because they're subpoenaed by the state.
Yeah.
So they can say whatever it is, they could incriminate me, potentially, correct? Or incriminate them, and they are going to be protected by the subpoena. So they offer them a deal. They are now turning them witnesses against me as well, and witnesses of the state. Every single motion that we have filed in this case gets denied by the judge, but every single motion that gets filed by the state gets approved. So then the very last thing, it really blew my mind. Not only did they arrested my attorney, but before that, previous to that, they accepted a motion for intrinsic evidence. And a motion for intrinsic evidence is something that the state filed on people who has died, is deported, in prison, or simply their statute of limitation just run out and they can't really accuse me. So they brought these statements, to court as intrinsic evidence to put them against me. And they basically what's going to happen, we're not going to be able to cross-examine these people because they're not there, they're not present. So we are going to have to deal with ghosts. So we're going in a trial with witnesses. They are basically ghosts because they're not going to be there. And seeing how the case is going, one of my main concerns is going to be if we try to strike these witnesses and move them, out of the evidence against me, most likely the judge is going to deny the motion because that's all she's been doing from day one. She denies every single motion that doesn't run or aligns with the state. So what is your opinion on this? You've seen many cases, murder cases, people accused of horrific crimes. What do you have to say about this? I'd like to hear it.
So, again, I do have experience in, criminal cases, going to trial, and that process. I am not a lawyer. I did not go to law school.
No,
So,
of course not.
Of course, I've never been involved in a case or had experienced where a victim was no longer living or present or anything like that, where they had to file some hearsay exception. It's what it sounds like to me, intrinsic evidence or some type of exception to the hearsay rule to allow some written statement or testimony by someone who cannot come to court and actually
being cross-examined.
Correct, or give that testimony directly. So that's the first I've ever heard of it or seen it. But again, that could be something in the law or something that's an exception that I just don't know
Absolutely.
directly. But again, you know, it does seem kind of unfair that if you have someone, you know, you have a right to, you know, confront your accusers. I mean, I don't know how do you not confront someone who can't show up and give their testimony? I don't understand that.
It's impossible. We're not going to be able to cross-examine these people.
Yeah, I don't know how you get to keep your rights in that regard, but then they can still use that. That doesn't make sense to me. But
So, based on everything that you have already, experienced, and you have already heard about my case and seen about my case, do you think should I feel safe going into this trial?
well, you know,
Should I trust the justice going into this trial?
no, wouldn't trust any of it at any time. I do see that from what you're telling me, like his involvement in the whole process of bringing the witnesses in and getting their testimony. It's almost like he's acting like their witness coordinator, but he has this, you know, for the state, but he has this financial interest. It just looks bad. It looks really bad.
In both parties.
Yeah, and I would definitely be, I don't know who the new attorney is. Is this the fifth one now? I don't know.
The fourth one, unless
Fourth one.
I don't know, something happens to him again.
You know,
Who knows? My case is full of that. So,
but even the number of attorneys that you're talking about, I mean, if I was in your position, I would have a huge problem with that too, because
it's having to start all over again.
correct, that person has to go back and do all that
Correct.
homework. And
Correct. And then I think one of the things that bothers me about Rohan is he's bullying me about this. He's publicly saying this attorney this attorney that, which he makes a lot of false statements saying that my first attorney was arrested and charged. That never happened. And I think we cleared that out already. But he's trying to make it sound like everything that has to do with me is bad and all the people that I'm related to are criminals. Even my attorneys are criminals. You know what I'm saying? It's like maintaining a narrative.
well, yeah, like in the video that we watched.
He's really overdoing it. Is that you can tell that he's really overdoing it, trying to convince everybody that everything around me and about me is criminal and it's bad and it's dark, you know? It's like he's making that effort and he continues to do that narrative constantly.
Yeah, well, it seems like he's making the implication that the ability for you to retain counsel is somehow a reflection on you as a defendant. As
That is correct.
like it's like a reflection of, well, she must be guilty. She can't keep a lawyer. Like no one wants to represent her.
No one wants to represent
That's kind of the message I felt that I heard through the video. He's like, oh, now we're on a third attorney, and this one was...
In the fact that he keeps repeating it over and over all over his videos,
Yeah.
I feel bullied. I feel that he is definitely trying to make me look bad on a narrative that he's already holding. So it's just like you said. I mean, it makes sense to me the way you're explaining it, that he is doing something, guiding it through his civil suit. It's definitely, and he's an personal injury attorney, so he's definitely a kind of attorney who looks for money. So he's motivated by money. I don't know what to say. I mean, it's complicated at the same time because I don't want to make any statements, about something else. But how can I make this? How can we make this look good?
Yeah, I mean, even going back to what I was saying, is his ability to have access to all these statements to the state.
Mm-hmm.
It gives him the ability to then walk out of that room, go to the next victim or the next witness, who he's been privy to their testimony just before, and he can go back and say, okay, we need to make sure you don't say anything that's going to contradict what that person said.
Well, he's very public on calling people that have been involved in the school, or with me in the past. So he actually paid commercials, okay, and he has made a public call to anybody who has been involved in the school, and he said he's doing it for the community. and he's not charging them. So this is from his heart.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, you
Stop
can
laughing.
you can drive down 85, 75, and you see the the billboards. If you have an injury or something like that, they're gonna take it for free initially.
They're gonna take it
Until
for
they-
free,
until they-
and
I mean-
they're going to go to the settlement.
But there's nothing for free in the end. I mean,
Correct.
I mean,
Yes, people, it's nothing for
I mean,
free.
he's not suing you for free. Like he's not asking for money at the end of the day.
I just, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I've been just trying to figure out what does he think he's gonna get from me, civilly? What is he really after? My insurance? My assets? What is he really after? They keep him so motivated for 8 years. Yeah. This attorney has been involved in this case for 8 years.
Follow the money. He's not.
What is it that is keeping him so motivated? Is he really that in need of money that he has to follow this case and put so much effort for so many years? I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
Well, there's also, what do they say? There's no such thing as bad press. Meaning, he could be just for the value of publicity, just for the fact that, this was in the news.
Yes.
And.
But he's been in it from the beginning, from the first day that was in the news.
Yeah. So he could be using. It could be he could be taking advantage of the publicity, trying to see it to its end. Whatever is there to go after financially with that situation.
So, Detective, knowing what you know now about this trial, my trial, would you feel safe going into trial?
Me personally, if I was in your shoes, I'd be very concerned. And just the main thing right off the bat is the turnover of your representation. I would not feel like I had an adequate representation through that process. Even now, you're on your fourth attorney. How much time has your attorney had to prepare for the case? Have certain things been handed off that should have been handed off the 3 other times that didn't?
Yeah, well, we noticed it was an issue to get discovery. The DA was actually trying not to give us discovery. That's number one. And number two, it was a hearing call without being in the on-call calendar. There was a hearing call out of the blue, and what we were supposed to, we had less than 24 hours, I will say about 12 hours, notice to show up for trial. And my attorney called us set up. My attorney said, we're not going. And then they tried to put us under contempt, and they were trying to say that they're going to take us to jail because we didn't show up in my trial. I didn't show up in my trial. And then there was a big argument about not being notified and not following procedures of the Supreme Court and the Superior Court, and all this stuff was going on where, actually the DA, put it on the docket. He actually washed his hands off and said, I'm not here to violate anybody's rights, and I'm really think it's alarming that even a warrant, be issued against Ms. Beltran and her attorney. And, it's all these kind of setups, ambush. So my attorney called it an ambush. He said basically they were going to sit me there for trial and basically set a trial for a couple hours and get me convicted and just throw me in jail. That was just a move that they did. So having that said, how do you feel?
Yeah, well, I like I said, with that, I think there's an argument for adequate representation at the end of the day. You haven't had anything consistent. It doesn't seem like the court is giving you enough time to be prepared for, to go to trial.
And I think that's the purpose.
Yeah, well, it could be trying to get you to come to a point where, well, I'm just gonna plea out, or I'm gonna plead guilty. I just need to get this over with, or, some people do that. Some people get pressured into feeling that way, and they end up doing it just to get it over
And I
with.
think it's a strategy. It's a strategy that the DA's office uses constantly, pushing you to that.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I don't like, I mean, that's just the big glaring thing that I see. If I was in your shoes, I don't, adequate representations first and foremost. If you're not getting that, nothing else matters. And then, but after that, it's like, it just seems like the state is making a poor judgment call by allowing this civil attorney to be directly involved with deposition for trial. He's put in a position where he could easily coach these witnesses. He has a financial interest in this case. It's just a conflict of interest, and that would be a huge issue with me. And that also kind of falls into adequate representation, because if you had an attorney that was there constantly the whole time, that knew the history very well, was paying attention to what was going on with that, I mean, the first thing that I would be doing is I'd be calling the prosecutor. It's improper. It looks bad. It creates a bad perception, because really, Julie, the way our system works is actually why the prosecutor and the defense attorney has an adversarial by nature relationship.
Correct.
They also work for the system in the sense that they both want it to work correctly. So, they've both sworn oaths they both sworn oaths to support the system, make sure it works correctly. So, if I was I'm not an attorney, but if I was you, I would want my attorney to be telling the prosecutor, hey, look, this just looks bad. Like, we want to do this the right way, and
I think my attorney has made every attempt to tell them that they're not playing fair, but they keep shutting him off to the point where they set him up to arrest him in the very last hearing. And they're trying to make it sound like this was unrelated to the case, but, we found out that it wasn't. So unfortunately, it is a setup. So Detective, I really want to thank you for being here tonight. And I think all this information was very valuable, and it gave us a very big insight of what's going on behind the scenes here. So this is one of my main concerns, and I want the audience to actually make it a public concern. And what is the reason I feel that this is absolutely not a fair trial, and I'm not going to have a fair trial. So you share my opinions, that would be great, but I think we hear it from somebody professional that has been working in this for a while. So thank you very much for giving us your time, and we'll see you in the next case.